I move on to questions to the Minister of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. Questions 6 and 11 have been withdrawn, and I call Matthew O'Toole.
Mr. Speaker.
I'm aware of statistical reports showing large increases in food exports between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland compared to 2020. I would add that caution needs to be applied to comparisons with 2020, given the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the disruption to trade was swallowed. The increase in trade with the Republic of Ireland is not surprising, given the trade barriers that have been put in place between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, with the resulting disruption causing business difficulties in trading what is by far our biggest market and having to seek alternative customers. Hence, I am continuing to seek the removal of all trade barriers within the United Kingdom for which goods are used in Northern Ireland.
Supplementary, Matthew O'Toole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, last week you said that a proposed new UK-New Zealand trade deal poses, quote, these are your words, a very serious threat to Northern Ireland farmers. You have just said that you've acknowledged that exports from north to south and in many cases I'm sure onwards to the wider European single market have increased. Does it not therefore follow that Northern Ireland is benefiting from the protections of the protocol and will benefit from the protections of the protocol to protect our farmers from what you yourself say are the very serious threats from the UK-New Zealand trade deal?
Well, thus far our exports have also increased to Great Britain, and therefore exports is going quite well. One of the reasons that we believe that exports from Northern Ireland to the Republic of Ireland have increased is because of the difficulties that the Republic of Ireland have on importation from Great Britain, and therefore we don't want to be in a similar circumstance where Northern Ireland has those difficulties on importation from Great Britain. So we already have issues currently that exist there. I don't think that it is in the benefit of any of our constituents to have unnecessary trade barriers imposed between our main trading partner, Great Britain, and indeed Northern Ireland, and therefore businesses right across Northern Ireland, right across the community, are saying to us, we need to remove those barriers. And I would hope that the members opposite would join us and assist us in supporting the removal of such barriers.
Minister.
Minister agree that the protocol barriers have caused substantial diversion of trade, and diversion of trade is one of the proper grounds upon which Article 16 of that same protocol can be triggered. And if it is triggered, will the Minister undertake that at that point he will cease all checks at our ports which are being exercised under the protocol?
I certainly have already engaged with my senior civil servants, indicating that they should be looking at the command paper that was produced in July as a means of moving forward on this particular issue, because trading barriers are not to our benefit, and the employment of highly qualified staff, veterinary staff, environmental health staff in that role takes them away from other important roles. So unnecessary checks should not be carried out at the Northern Ireland juxtaposition with the rest of Great Britain at our seaports, and therefore that action needs to be addressed. I would remind the member, and he knows very well on this issue, that there has been a different set of circumstances relating to live animals which has pre-existed Brexit and the protocol, and that is something which we need to take full cognizance of as well.
In the context of the increasing levels of north-south trade, will the Minister give a commitment to work with the agri-food sector to enable them to maximise the benefits of the protocol in terms of being able to access the EU and the British market? Thank you.
Well, I can assure the member that when it comes to selling goods, I'll take pounds sterling, I'll take euros, I'll take dollars, yen, whatever it happens to be, and I will work with whoever wishes to acquire the very well-produced goods that exist in Northern Ireland. I'll work with them to make it as easy as possible for them to acquire those goods.
Well, Steve Egan.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for the Minister's remarks so far. And I need to make a quick declaration of interest as the ex-Chief Executive of the British Irish Chamber of Commerce. Minister, has there been any analysis done of the diversion of trade that has occurred? Because it's quite obvious that the reduction in movement of goods between places like Holyhead and Liverpool to Dublin has in some respects been replicated by movements from Northern Ireland into the Irish Republic. Have you had an opportunity to talk with any of the major supermarket chains about this dislocation of the logistics chain and the fact that we have a circular economy and it seems to be falling flat?
Yeah, we have, and clearly there is a lot of goods coming through Northern Ireland seaports as opposed to the Dublin seaport now, because they find it easier to get into the island of Ireland on that basis. And there has been a dislocation that has taken place there, and there has been less use of the land bridge to go to the continent as well. Our logistics firms, I have to say, have been doing some tremendous work on terms of food security and food traceability, and I believe that that work actually covers a lot of the issues that was certainly talked about pre-Brexit, about being able to trace food from source right through to sale and everything in between. And ultimately, I think that they are currently, the standard of the work will be a template that is used right across the world in due course. So if members have the opportunity to look at some of this, I think that you will be pleasantly surprised and pleased just how good we are at tracing all goods from the factory that they leave for all of the time that they're in transit right through to the destination that they go to. And if we ever do get to the point of an agreement with the European Union, and I hope that at some stage they will be sensible about how the best we can protect their single market, they will be able to identify the logistics work that is being done will greatly assist in that.
I call Roy Beggs.
Question number 2.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll include 2 with number 9, and I'm satisfied that all the material considerations have been assessed by officials for this marine licence application, reviews of the discharge consent and abstraction licence for the proposed Islandmagee gas storage development. Therefore, it is not my intention to review the decisions on the matter at this time, and final licences have been issued to the applicant on the 5th of November 2021. I am content that adequate mitigation has been identified to minimise the impacts of the project and has been incorporated into the conditions of the marine licence, discharge consent and abstraction licence, which will augment the existing mitigation in the planning permission.
Roy Beggs, supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The discharge licence speaks of 24,000 cubic metres per day, which is difficult to visualise, but it's been estimated that this is the equivalent of 10 20-tonne loads of rock salt being deposited at that spot per hour for the next 8 to 9 years. So my question to the Minister is, how can he be so sure that this will not be detrimental to this very sensitive ecosystem, and in particular that there will not be solid deposits coming along with the concentrated brine which will gather in that area?
Well, I can indicate to the member that at no time did I take anything to do with the actual assessments that took place or had any interference with any assessments that took place. I waited very patiently and allowed civil servants and people with expertise on their behalf to carry out all of those investigations, and made a decision based on what was recommended to me by those officials. A number of in-depth assessments were made on the potential impacts of the project on the environment, including a detailed habitats regulations assessment completed by AERA, which considers the potential impacts of the project on the national site network and also the Portmuck area of special scientific interest, the Gobbins ASSI and the Larnloch ASSI, and the HRA was also reviewed by an independent third party. An environmental statement was prepared by the applicant. The chapters on avian and marine biodiversity, underwater noise, cumulative effects were updated in the 2018-2019, as was the brine dispersion model and accompanying third-party audit. This material has been made available to the public on the DAERA website.
Paul John Stewart.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Minister for his answer so far, and I share the very real concerns among local people about the potential environmental impact on this. Can the Minister confirm what measures are in place in the draft marine construction licence to require the developer to commence the decommissioning in the event that the gas caverns are commenced but not completed or not used for a period of time? And will the Minister ensure that any financial guarantee provided under the lease between Islandmagee Energy and Crown Estates to manage any residual liabilities at the end of the lifespan of the gas caverns is for the benefit of his department?
Islandmagee Energy Limited is responsible for the safety decommissioning of the gas storage caverns at the end of the project life and for ensuring that arrangements are made in respect of any residual liabilities. The lease from the landowner, the Crown Estate, will require that an acceptable abandonment programme applicable to the works, including the arrangements for residual liabilities, is provided. The Crown Estate has indicated that works cannot commence below mean high water spring tide level until the issue is resolved, and DAERA has included this in an informative on the marine licence. DAERA will continue to engage with the Crown Estate to ensure that all conditions are satisfied. The company may require a new marine licence from DAERA to undertake the physical aspect of the decommissioning activity. At this stage, the impacts of decommissioning would be considered and the potential environmental impacts would be given full consideration.
Philip McGuigan.
Ken Collier, Minister, I hear how you've answered the previous two questions, but it simply beggars belief that a project the size of the gas storage facility proposed for Islandmagee would not have a significant environment impact in an area both in and surrounded by other special scientific interests and conservation areas. And given the need also to move away from fossil fuels and the British government announcement that new gas boilers will be banned from 2035, does the Minister now accept that this project should be scrapped?
Well, that is a matter for the people who are developing the project as to whether it is financially viable or not. We were asked questions in regards to its environmental acceptability, and all of the people who were involved in that took their decision based on whether that could be achieved or not achieved, and then made their recommendations to me on that basis. So that is how this has come about. It hasn't been as a result of anything other than that, and therefore, whilst I recognise that this decision will not be popular, I do also recognise that I need to take cognizance of the material that was put in front of me by independent officials and indeed experts on this issue. I'd also remind the member that one of the issues that we have in front of us today is the price of gas has skyrocketed because there is a lack of gas stored. And therefore, the member may not be that concerned that people in his constituency, people who are on the breadline, are paying gas prices 30% and 40% higher than they would have been in previous years, and indeed electricity prices. And therefore, his resistance to having storage and leaving it to Vladimir Putin to turn gas on and off as and when it suits him and put prices up on the back of that to his constituents is a matter for him.
Because Stuart Dixon.
Mr Speaker, Minister, given the cross-cutting nature of your decision, what consultation have you had with the utility regulator and the owners of the Scottish Northern Ireland interconnector pipeline, which transports gas from Scotland to Northern Ireland? And indeed, in response to the answer which you've just given to the House, do you not recognise that the application is not for gas to be stored for Northern Ireland, but is in fact gas to be stored for the rest of the United Kingdom and to be sold at ransom prices in the rest of the United Kingdom? But Minister, where are the cross-cutting considerations of this? Will you be the Minister that leaves Northern Ireland with a hole under Larne Lough and nobody else agreeing with you?
Well, I'm sorry, but the member may want to hype things up. There was a process that was commenced as a result of an application. That process was conducted properly and correctly, and at the conclusion of the process, I was presented with the documentation. I sought no documentation throughout the process. I sought to have no influence on that process. I merely allowed that process to carry out until its conclusion, and then was presented with my options at the conclusion. And it was very clear what was being identified and recommended to me by the officials and by the experts. And the member may not like what they have recommended. Indeed, I may not like what they have recommended, but I do have to give consideration to experts when they're asked to do a piece of work and give full cognizance of the views expressed by them. And he may not like those views, but they are done on the best basis possible.
McCrossan.
I thank the Minister for his answers up until now. Just in relation to, I know the Minister referred earlier there to independent involvement in third-party audits. Could the Minister just expand on that to advise what independent assessment has the Department sought of the environmental impact of this project on the marine habitat, external to the Department and independent of the Department, please?
As I indicated, these recommendations were put out to third parties and to independent expertise to provide us with that due diligence where a further check was done beyond what officials and what the civil servants would have done. So that course of work was carried out. The precautionary principle was applied in all of this, and therefore this is something which we didn't arrive at quickly or indeed easily. It was a course of work that started before my time. I deliberately only became involved at the very conclusion of it, because given the sensitivities around us, I didn't want to be involved in trying to encourage people one way or the other in terms of the recommendations that they came to. I just wanted an independent recommendation to be given to me, and therefore I was always going to take the decision based on the independence of the people who were acting on behalf of the Department.
And I call down Dodds.
Question number 3.
Please provide an update on the independent strategic review of the Northern Ireland Agri-Food sector, which of course you were instrumental in setting up. And Sir Peter Kendall, who was appointed to lead the review, has met with a range of stakeholders over the past 6 months to explore the challenges and opportunities that the agri-food sector now faces. And I look forward to reading his findings and recommendations in the final report.
And Dodds, supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for his answer. If I recall correctly, one of the issues that we wanted to tackle within the independent review of the agri-food sector was the issue of competitiveness and productivity. I read recently that the Finance Minister is interested in low productivity in Northern Ireland and seems to think that the way to increase productivity is within the EU, despite the fact that we've just spent 40-odd years in the EU and that hasn't been a particular help. Will the Minister be bidding to the Finance Minister, along with the Economy Minister, for funding to invest in the agri-food sector, in those businesses that are world-class in Northern Ireland, to help them to increase productivity and competitiveness?
Well, as the member knows very well, that this crosses 2 departments, DFE and ourselves, and agriculture is more involved in the primary sector, and DFE is more involved in the business side. I suppose the tricky part of it, and I certainly would be very supportive of bids going into the Department of Finance to sustain our agri-food industry, which employs 30% of our manufacturing sector and has a turnover of over £5 billion and has the potential to increase significantly. The tricky bit of it is that we are now in a circumstance where, for the long-term security of the sector, we need investment which will not necessarily create jobs. So a lot of the food sector does need to mechanise and become smarter and technologically use more robotic equipment and all of that there in order for that to sustain. But it doesn't give a headline of actually more jobs at the end of it, but it does ensure that there's real sustainability for the jobs that exist. And I would hope that Invest NI will be able to work with us in doing that, and indeed the Department of Finance, in ensuring that the agri-food sector, which has went through a number of transformations to be the successful powerhouse that it is to the Northern Ireland economy, can continue to be that for many decades going forward.
Matthew O'Toole.
Mr. Speaker, I'm tempted to point out the previous questioner mentioned competitiveness. I can't think of anything more in terms of competitiveness than having dual access, unique dual access to two different markets. But can I ask the Minister, given the importance of the all-island component for example, our dairy sector in terms of the production of dairy goods, has a single food producer or farming sector body approached his department or approached him and supported the principle of the UK triggering Article 16?
Well, the dairy sector was mentioned very heavily in advance of the protocol. And everything seemed to base around the problems that would exist in the dairy sector, but nobody seemed to pay any attention as to the problems that would exist in every other sector, should we have a protocol of the nature that eventually arrived. And consequently, we are in a circumstance where there are so many goods which we're either paying a premium on or struggling to get into Northern Ireland as a consequence of that protocol. So whenever we make decisions on behalf of all of industry, not one sector, and I believe that it would be a really positive thing if we were to invest in the dairy sector in Northern Ireland and ensure that more of the milk that was produced here is processed here. It makes absolute sense to me, and that milk, as a processed product, most of it will end up in the GB market. So having that circular economy all makes considerable sense.
I call John Blair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Northern Ireland agri-food sector has been heavily dependent on the flow of EU workers, which has stopped due to the UK's post-Brexit immigration rules. Can the Minister provide us with an update on what actions have been taken to address these labour shortages?
I thank the member for the question. Yes, and there has been that stop of new EU workers coming in. Of course, those who have been in are welcome to stay, and those who returned home during COVID are welcome to come back, but many have chosen not to. I might add to that there is a series of other people, some people would estimate at least 1 million, possibly 1.5 million across the UK, who have decided to opt out of the workforce over the period of COVID. And that is a lifestyle choice for many of those people who are perhaps over 55s in general, but still have the capacity to carry on working for a number of years, but have made that lifestyle choice that having got used to how things were, to live on less and to enjoy life, and we can't force people to do otherwise. But the government's aim is to get more people out of unemployment and into work, and that's a reasonable aim. I think it's proven to be particularly tricky when it comes to the food sector. There is availability of considerable numbers of people from other places, including Philippines, and we could be getting those people in from those areas should the UK government decide that that was something, a policy that they wish to engage, and we've been seeking to encourage that. Because I think that helps to sustain industry. Certainly in that interim period, they have opened the doors for an additional 800 workers to come through. I'm just after a phone call with George Eustace, and we'll be hoping to get a reasonable number of those people through for December, which will help alleviate some of the pressures that are on our food processing sector.
Call on you, Murphy.
Minister, can you clarify if any potential recommendations arising from the independent strategic review of our agri-food sector would be considered in the draft food strategy for the North?
Well, in terms of all of that, we need to pull all of these strategies together, and the strategies that we have need to have connectivity. So the strategy we have on green growth, for example, and on the environment strategy, which I hope to talk about tomorrow, will all be things which help us to pull together all of the various areas that we need to address here in Northern Ireland and ensure that we go forward on our best foot. And that's ultimately very important to us.
McCrossan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Minister for the answers to the questions so far. Question 4, Minister.
As this is ongoing, I'm not able to provide a cost at the time, but will be happy to do so when it's available.
Supplementary, Daniel McCrossan.
Undoubtedly, the cost will be significant, Minister. Minister, do you accept that your illegal obstruction of meetings of the North-South Ministerial Council undermines the rule of law?
As it's a matter that's currently before the court, I don't wish to comment.
Following on from that, given the High Court judgment that the DUP boycott of the North-South Ministerial Council is unlawful and a breach of the Ministerial Pledge of Office, would the Minister undertake to end this juvenile boycott now and get back to doing the job he was appointed to do?
Again, this is a matter which is before Justice Schofield, so I'm not going to get involved in details around what a noble judge might make. I would say it was rather juvenile of the member and his colleagues to pull this institution down for 3 years and deny people the opportunity to deal with health, education, infrastructure and so many other issues, and cause real harm to all of the public of Northern Ireland as a consequence of their actions.
Palm Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 5, please.
The illegal breeding and trading of low welfare puppies is an abhorrent practice which my department continues to disrupt, working in conjunction with other agencies. It's very difficult to establish the number of people who choose to operate in contravention of dog breeding legislation in Northern Ireland. Intelligence provided to my officials indicates that the breeding of low welfare pups often takes place outside of Northern Ireland. Regrettably, these animals are then illegally imported into Northern Ireland and trafficked via our ports to more lucrative markets in Great Britain. My department is well aware of the pattern of movements. In response to this problem, it has established and coordinated activity at ports under the Pause for Thought initiative. As a result of collaborative working, this has resulted in multiple interceptions this year, most recently when 10 Springer's Spaniel pups were found hidden in a van in Larne, which was bound for England. I acknowledge much more needs to be actioned on this and will continue to press for that to happen.
Palm Cameron, supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer so far. Does the Minister agree that Lucy's Law, Private Members Bill being brought forward by my colleague Robin Newton, will go a long way in providing the authorities with the necessary powers to greater tackle the illegal puppy farming trade in Northern Ireland? And would the Minister also agree that more needs to be done, as outlined, in terms of both Republic of Ireland and with the pets being purchased in GB, and surely by ensuring only registered businesses can engage in such activity, and indeed greater enforcement, that actually, if this was achieved, it would lessen the financial incentive by criminals to participate in these unscrupulous actions?
The member is quite right, and they are unscrupulous actions, and more does need to be done in terms of that. I have impressed upon my officials the unacceptability of this trade, and that they really need to stretch themselves in terms of ensuring that they clamp down as hard as possible on individuals who are engaging in all sorts of things to circumvent the rules and circumvent the law, and obviously make considerable money from this very lucrative trade. And I would also encourage people in Great Britain and indeed at home who are buying pets that they do more to check the source of where those pets come from, because they could be buying some cute little bundle of fluff which has been not well reared, not treated appropriately in terms of its veterinary vaccinations and so forth, and consequently they could be buying themselves just heartbreak, and I don't think that any family deserves that.
That ends the period for list of questions, and we move on to 15 minutes of topical questions. Questions 1, 6 and 7 have been withdrawn, and I call Matthew O'Toole.
Minister, speaking of cute little bundles of fluff, I wanted to ask you about your party colleague, Sammy Wilson. Last week, Minister, you attended COP26, presumably because you believe climate change is real and action needs to be taken on it. But your colleague, Sammy Wilson, called COP26, quote, a climate circus. Minister, on Saturday I marched with thousands of people, especially young people, who are scundered with this place and our failure to take action on the crisis of this century. Will you, on the record now, dissociate yourself from the irresponsible nonsense coming from your colleague from East Antrim?
Well, I leave the member to ask the questions of Sammy whenever he gets the opportunity to do that. I represent this department and I represent my party in this department, and we recognise that on the environment we all need to do considerably better than what has happened in the past. So whether that is on how much carbon or greenhouse gases we produce and the necessary reductions that we have to ensure happens, whether that is on air quality, whether that is on water quality or biodiversity, in all those areas we need to do more. And that is why one of the first things that I done was set out the Forest for a Future. More recently, we have the bee pollinator scheme. In between, we had the lessee equipment, the low emission spreading equipment that was made support available for farms, so we reduced the ammonia. And you can see over the course of my time in government, there has been a whole series of actions to ensure that we do leave the environment in a better place than we found it.
Supplementary, Matthew O'Toole.
Speaker, and I want to ask a specific question of the Minister about about environmental protection and climate mitigation. Minister, you may know we have been ranked in this jurisdiction 12th out of 240 countries or jurisdictions around the world in terms of biodiversity loss. The Royal Society for the Protection of Birds have suggested that of the 2015 to 2020 biodiversity strategy, 83% of our targets were simply not met. Minister, what are you doing to ensure that we do better in this place, and what specific deliverable, real targets will be in the next programme for government that your department hopefully is working on as we speak?
Well, the key one on biodiversity is the biodiversity strategy. So, as I say, the environment strategy cleared its last hurdle through the executive on Thursday, and I'll present it to this Assembly tomorrow. With the Speaker's permission, of course, and the Green Growth Strategy. But the biodiversity strategy, which we're currently working on, as well as the ammonia strategy, will all help on that particular issue. What I would say about biodiversity involves management. And if you want to see biodiversity in action, go to Glenmurray, where we have a course of work with the RSPB. And as a consequence, we are seeing more hen harriers, curlew, red grouse, etc. And that is as a result of quality management of the environment in that area. And that has engaged both the farming community and the RSPB in delivering that. And, you know, those people who want us to do nothing and go to wilding will ensure that our biodiversity is ruined entirely. So one of the most damaging things to the ground nesting birds in that area is crows and foxes. But there are some people who would suggest that we don't do anything on the management of that. I'm sorry, but if you want genuine biodiversity, then you do have to engage in steps to ensure that happens. People thought they'd introduce grey squirrels to Northern Ireland because they're nice, cute, fluffy things. And the consequence was that we lost most of our red squirrels. So it isn't a simple thing. It's a complex thing, but we can make significant achievement on it, and I'm very determined that we do.
I call Keith Archibald.
Can call you, and I thank the Minister for his responses so far. Minister, the British Government's recent announcement on a trade deal with New Zealand will have a very negative impact on our farmers, which the Minister has acknowledged. It follows similar deals with other countries that also produce food to lower environmental and animal welfare standards than our farmers do. These trade deals are a direct outcome and indeed stated intent of the type of hard Brexit that the Minister's party advocated for. So can I ask the Minister, what is he going to do to support our farmers who stand to lose out as a result?
Well, I've spoken to senior people both in Sainsbury's and Tesco's in recent times, and they have both committed to buying products which meet certain environmental standards. So where there's deforestation, for example, they will not be buying product from that area. Where there isn't the reductions in the greenhouse gases and the carbons and so forth that can happen in those areas, then again those will be issues. So those places and those countries which want to produce things to low environmental standards will find it very difficult to market, particularly in this jurisdiction, because the main buyers won't want to acquire those products.
Keith Archibald, supplementary.
I thank the Minister for that response. And Minister, can I ask, do you acknowledge that the majority of agri-food producers support the need for the protocol and don't want it scrapped, and instead want solutions to implement it more easily? And have you advocated that on their behalf to the British Government?
No, I don't accept it, because I'm getting complaints from them continually about the protocol. I think that they would like a trade arrangements between the UK and the European Union, which will allow a relatively free flow of trade with appropriate checks. I think that they want an entirely free flow of trade between Northern Ireland and Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and they want to ensure that they will provide security for the single market for the European Union. And that is something which we are more than willing to work with the European Union on, to ensure the integrity of the single market is upheld, but that does not involve the current protocol, which is punitive, harsh, and is damaging to the Northern Ireland economy, damaging to Northern Ireland consumers, and damaging to the constituents that the member represents.
Call Rosemary Parton.
Thank you, Minister, for your answers so far. Minister, I have had representation from the organic egg sector producers, and at the moment they are sourcing 95% food that's 95% organic. After the protocol derogation, they will be expected to source food that's 100%. After the protocol derogation comes to an end, which is December, they will be expected to source food that's 100% organic, and there's great difficulty with this. What can you do to support these farmers?
I am concerned for the organic farm community, and they're relatively small in Northern Ireland terms in the amount of output, but they are an important community, and as a consequence of them being small, then there isn't local suppliers for much of their product. And they have to go elsewhere to import. Therein lies the problem that most of that importation traditionally has been coming from Great Britain, and their costs have went up exponentially. So that is all an area which is again damaged as a consequence of the protocol, and that is something that therefore we want to try to ensure we can get the appropriate relaxations put in place, whereby they can conduct their business not too dissimilar from what it was previous to the protocol.
Rosemary Parton, supplementary.
Thank you. And Minister, these agricultural producers, these organic producers, could be working at a disadvantage. For example, in Great Britain, they will be allowing 95% organic content in the food. What will AERA be doing to help them market their food now?
Well, again, I've had a conversation with Minister Eustace today and on Saturday about a lot of these issues, and we will continue to engage at that high level with the UK Government to ensure that we get the outcome, the best possible outcome for both producers and consumers here in Northern Ireland, and ultimately that is our role. And because we are in here and because we have those opportunities, we're speaking at the highest level of the UK Government to get these things resolved, and I trust we have waited quite some time for that to happen. I sincerely hope that we don't have much longer to wait to resolve these issues, because it has been extremely difficult for many small businesses across Northern Ireland, many family-owned businesses that only have themselves and maybe one or two other workers to actually make their living, and we want to ensure that that becomes somewhat easier for them.
I call Caroline Keelan.
I thank the Minister for his questions. I'm not asking about farms in North Belfast, to be relieved. It's about single-use plastics and the directive. So I'm asking, can you provide an update on what measures your department are taking to ensure that the directives are met by January 2022?
Well, we have currently a piece of work on the plastic bag levy, which is with the committee at this stage, I understand, and we will be bringing something forward very significant on that going forward within the government, the state. We have done a piece of work on single-use plastics, which I think will eliminate around 9 single-use plastics that are most common. And we're also looking at a DRS scheme, and we'll have to make a decision whether we go with our own scheme or whether we go with a scheme which is more closely associated with England. And those are all issues that we're looking at in terms of ensuring that we do away in as far as possible with single-use plastic. It's certainly something that I desire to be the case.
Caroline Keelan, supplementary.
It would seem, to be honest, to be fairly piecemeal. I know you said it was significant in terms of 9 pieces of single-use plastic, but given this directive has to be honoured by January 2022, would the Minister commit to even just trying to give further detail on his answer? I appreciate it's a topical question and he might not have all the details, but certainly I know others would appreciate a bit more detail on what he's actually doing in his department on behalf of the Executive.
No, there's absolutely no problem. There is a series of pieces of work, and I illustrated 3 there. There's more than that, but I illustrated 3 to demonstrate that it's something that we do take seriously. And I'm happy to correspond with the member and giving her the full detail in a written format so she can study that.
Rachel Wood's not in her place, and I call Dolores Kelly.
Mr Speaker, and I wonder, Minister, have you been able to resolve with the Minister for Justice yet the data sharing arrangement in relation to the creation of an animal cruelty register? Sorry.
I don't have a further update on that at this issue for the member.
Supplementary, Dolores Kelly.
Well, I'm grateful for the member. The Minister perhaps could write if there's anything further, but Minister, earlier the Minister referred to the pause for thought at the ports. I just wondered, how would you anticipate trying to close down some of those loopholes that were exposed on the recent Spotlight programme? If there's anything further you think that can be done and that your officials are currently working on?
Yeah, frankly, the issues that were brought to light from the Spotlight programme were pretty depressing. And I have been working closely with Robin Newton on the Lucy's Law. I would hope that private member's bill could be completed before this term. If it's not, I would hope that the evidence that has been raised in it is something that AERA will take forward in the new term as a priority, because I do think that this is a reprehensible trade. A relatively small number of people are making themselves millionaires out of it, and we really do need to clamp down very hard on this trade and ensure that we do not become the conduit for poorly reared puppies from the Republic of Ireland to Great Britain, and that's something that I really don't want to see happening. It is happening, and I want to see it stopped.
Sinead Annis not in her place, and and also time is up. Members, please take your ease for a moment or two to be move on to the next item on the order paper.